Oh,
Oh, now it's so.
yeah, yeah. Right, now I've got a question from Harry Rogers, who is actually the bass player in Never 42. And I know I like bass players. He and Alan O'Reilly wanted to know: would you like to be involved with the band in its current lineup, with its current lineup?
No, that's a good question. Yes, I would.
Right.
But also there's that thing of uh, I had a very good run at it.
Yeah.
Mark and I'm still very proud of the fact that we're still mates. I was speaking to him only the other day, and I really value that. And I think also it was a relationship of its moment. He doesn't need it now.
Mm.
He. And I always say to him, I said, I think you learned from the best, and you kind of legislated me out of a job.
Right.
But it wasn't that. When we parted company, which was it just because it had kind of run its course.
Right.
Level were sort of at that point it was the end of it. I don't know, like the second phase really, and then he went off and he did stuff on his own and
Mm.
was going out then as Mark King of Level 42, and then
Yeah.
he got the name back, and then him and Mike, went back out on the road as Level 42, and that's what he's been doing. But also, the business has changed immensely since we were working together, out of all proportion, and his business is very, very successful.
Mm.
Obviously, clearly, the pandemic has impacted it massively.
Yeah. Yeah.
But essentially, it's a live-based thing. He doesn't need me. He's perfectly capable of
Doing it
doing all
himself.
that on his own. It'd be slightly different, I suppose, if he was releasing regular records and was trying to get involved in doing, the latest dance craze on TikTok. I might have more input.
Mm.
But no, yeah, I would still love to do it, but it would be from not a nostalgic point. It would be like, because I know that he and I always had a good time,
Mm.
nearly all of the time doing it. It was a thing of huge laughs.
Mm.
Huge. I think that we used to spend a lot of time laughing. It's the same. I'm very fortunate. It's the same for me with Knopfler. I've kind of like made a career out of being the ambience director rather than anything else.
Mm.
And it's a joyful experience. If it's not, you don't really want to be. It's terrible. You've got to have a sense of humour of it.
Mm.
But no, the nostalgic part of me, yes, would like to do it.
Mm. Mm.
But the reality is it's great. It's great as it is. He doesn't need
Yeah.
me, and it's fine. We're all doing different things, but we're still mates, which is
Mm.
great.
Which is funny. Some who had asked, yeah, Corinne Graves wanted to know: do you stay in touch with the members of the band? Obviously, Mark, you've covered, but any of
I
the others?
definitely stay in touch with him. I haven't spoken a word to Phil. I think since the abortive "let's get him back in" scenario, which ended the same way as it ended first time around, really.
Mm.
Mike, I don't stay in touch with him, but I do. If I see him at a show or anything comes up about business at any point, then I'd be in touch with him.
Mm. Yeah, funny enough, Manaf Mohammed asked, how did the band get on with each other? So it's a very interesting question.
I would say it's a funny dynamic in a band. Obviously, because Phil and Boone were brothers, that was that brought one particular uh, part to it. Mike was always not trying to be the referee, but he doesn't have a very dominant personality. He's just an all-round nice
Nice
bloke.
guy, yeah.
Yeah, and he would kind of always, I think, go with the path of least resistance,
Right.
um, because he didn't like conflict. He didn't want to get into arguments.
Mm.
Whereas Mark and Phil, they were the leaders of the band, if you like, and they were the most vocal and the most forceful personalities. So there was always going to be creative sparks flying there. And I think what happened, it kind of when they split from John Gould, that was one sort of phase, and then when Phil parted company with the band, that was another. And I think that there was always going to be at some moment a battle between Mark and Phil about the direction of the band. and I lined up with Mark, which I suspect, I don't know if Phil sees it like that, but I would suspect so, and that would be, and I voted with Mark. For me, he was my link in the band. He was the bloke who I got on well with, and he was also the.
It's interesting because three people actually asked: Paul Branson, Mark Curries, and Ant Green de Seclay Linda. Said, could you have done more to persuade Boone and Phil to stay?
No.
It was Boone, that's it. Yeah.
Boone had to leave for health. Boone was, had his own issues and challenges, and I remember him saying to me, I'm pretty sure it was Canada, it might have been Toronto or Montreal, can't remember. And he basically said to me, I've got to stop. If I don't stop, I'm going to kill myself.
Right. Oh, wow.
And it wasn't like, if I don't stop, I'm going to, it was like, I can't, I'm just not handling life on the road anymore. I don't enjoy it. I don't want to do it. And there was no persuading him at all to it. Phil, Phil, no. It was always going to be, you've got to choose really, and I was always going to choose Mark. That was just, we were mates, still are, and that's, and I think Phil, the band would not have been as big if Phil had stayed in the band and had a bit more of creative input to it. I think that they would not have had the global success that they had.
No,
because it was just not in Phil's DNA. He was not interested in that. It wasn't in his DNA. He was a jazz drummer, a brilliant player, phenomenally brilliant player. And, but no, I couldn't have done any more. No, but the relationship between Phil and Mark had kind of broken down by that point. And the same with Mike, really. Phil had kind of gone off the rails to a greater or lesser extent. And it all blew up, funnily enough, when we didn't go to Japan, because Phil checked into hospital and the gear was already on its way to Japan. So it was like a hugely expensive decision. We weren't covered on insurance for that kind of incident. And that was it. That was kind of the last straw, if you like.
Interesting. Raymond Pursued had actually asked, how did you become manager? But obviously we did cover that with the changeover from John. Craig Claiborne asked, did they actually have to audition? But again, I'm assuming no, you just knew them, did you? Yeah,
that was it, and that was because I was on the road every day with them whenever they did the UK shows. We did pretty much from that that first show at Hammersmith Palais with Shaky Tank. We did, I think I was on every UK show from that point until I stopped. So yeah, I was with them all the time. So yeah, no, I didn't have to audition. I'd spent my career auditioning by that point. Right. Okay. Oops. I don't know what I've done here. Oops. Right. So if we end this part, and I'll come back and do a second part, but what was I going to ask? Yeah, you've got obviously a level 42. I've got about 20 in my room, level 42 posters, but you've got something behind you. What's that one about? That one is a poster, framed poster we did from Outlaw, we were the promoters, who I owned at the time, for the Autumn Tour 1984, all sold out. Yes, from the Margate Winter Gardens, Guildford Civic Hall, Glasgow Barrowlands, Southend Chris Pavilion, Fairfield Halls, and 3 nights at Hammersmith. Yeah, no, 2 nights at Hammersmith, 1 night at Birmingham Odeon. Those are the days. It's nice to see that you haven't just put that up for the sake of this interview, have you? No, I'm not that handy. I love that, but I love it as well because it's really loud and pink and horrible. Of course, yes. Of course, but yeah, no, it's yeah. I grew up with that band, that it kind of made my. Obviously, Tears for Fears was huge, but they were, Level will always have a special place in my heart. Absolutely, that's really nice to know as well, and the fact that it is there and on show for you to see every day, just like sort of where I am in my office. Okay, Paul, as I said, I'll come back to you in a couple of minutes, and we'll do part 2. Oh, first time round. Oh,
Paul, thank you very much again for part 2 of our Q&A. Got an interesting question from Tony Anskoff. Where do you see the live event industry heading over the next few years, bearing in mind how we've had a year of not touring and the effect of Brexit and bands touring?
I think it's going to be a pretty bumpy road for people, English musicians, trying to get from here to Europe. I think that the agreement, the so-called free trade oven-ready agreement that Boris trumpeted, is nothing of the sort. And at the moment, I'm involved with the UK Music Live group, and the problems are going to be significant, both in terms of availability of things like Arctics and buses,
right,
and UK operators having to relocate to Europe on the advice from the Department of Trade and Industry, because that is the only way to get around the problems of getting from Dover or Harwich into Europe. And also the issues with some countries asking for visas and extra costs or work permits, and at the moment, it's almost impossible to take a UK registered self-drive splitter van with you, the band, and gear in the back with CDs and merch. It's impossible to take that into Europe as it stands. You can't at the moment, and I don't know if this is going to change, have a transit van with a band in it and take commercial gear with it at the same time. So you have to, if it's commercial goods, they have to travel in a separate vehicle, which is purely for commercial goods only. It's not been well thought through. It won't come as any surprise to people, I suspect, that those people negotiating Brexit basically didn't really know what they were talking about in a large extent, and we spent more time and effort and money on 12,000 people who work in the fishing industry than 300,000 people who work in entertainment. But that's, that's a political rabbit hole, which is probably a separate podcast on its own.
Yeah, I reckon so, yeah. Julian?
I think for big bands, they'll find a way around it, because you can always throw money at it to make it work, but it's going to be problematic for small to medium bands for sure.
But obviously, from what you're saying, having an overseas, or let's say a base in Europe for the same company seems to be...
Yeah, which seems nuts. It's not very good for the exchequer, I wouldn't have thought that. What do I know?
Julian Papandrea wanted to know, how did the collaboration with Larry Dunn and Verdine White come about?
Well, that was before my time. I think that came through I think it came through Waddy Baddery.
Really? Okay.
I think so. I'm not sure. You'd have to ask Mike or Phil or Mark about that, because I can't. That was definitely before my time, because that was on the album. With Kansas City Milkman on it, funnily enough, I think, wasn't it?
With you on the vocals.
Yeah, not on the recorded version, sadly.
Chris Griffiths wanted to know how... I've done that. How did Level 42 become the house band? Done that in the previous one. What David Chan wanted to know, what was your favourite Level 42 album or single?
I would say... Oh, that's interesting. My favourite track is Kansas City Milkman, only because I've managed to sing on it live on stage at least 3 times. My favourite album would, funny enough, would probably be World Machine, because that was the first one for me.
But involved with, right, okay.
And I think it was also, it was a step change for them, that they went from being this, pretty big in the UK to being massive in the UK, and then big in Europe, and like I say, it was the start of the journey. So for me, it would probably be that one.